Hello, welcome in. Welcome, replay crew. I'm going to be adding in some pebbles shapes into these areas in between the rocks that I painted on the last live stream. These were using granulating watercolors. So now that they've dried down, you can see these beautiful areas where the paint has a different density. So maybe darker where the pigment has settled out, and it just creates these lovely variations in color that are just exciting to work with, and with a fairly simple technique of mixing the paint and using a brush to create create these rock shapes. They're not perfect circles. They are they're not smooth on the edges. They're just very much an organic shape. It's a kind of a no-fault technique. And you load this up with the watercolor, choosing colors that are granulating, and that'll be your things that contain pigment like ultramarine blue, pigment that's found in burnt sienna, raw sienna, the browns, and I've also used raw sienna. I've used a perylene maroon to get a lovely red cast down here. A little bit of bright, this brilliant green is viridian, and just admixtures with some browns, some blues. I use a Grumbacher color indigo for the blue cast. So that's what got us started. Good morning, Maya. Welcome in. How are you? It's good to see you. I was going to get started in the middle, and I know my hand's a bit shaky, so maybe I will start over here instead. I'm using a sepia 03 micron. It's an archival pigment ink, and it is waterproof. So once I finish this step of outlining the pebbles, I will then come in with more water-based media. It could be watercolors, might be Gansai Tambi, and it will most likely include some of the Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2, which is a waxy but water-soluble crayon, and I've got a pretty good handful of some earthy colors, so that's what I'll be finishing the pebbles with. The Gansai Tambi are these Japanese watercolor paints. So welcome in, everybody. I'm really grateful to see folks in here today. I am doing well, thank you for asking. It was a bit of a wild night in the world of moderating chat, but I got through that, and I think I saw you in there, right, Maya? I was so busy with what I was doing, I feel like I had to rush through and didn't get much chance to chat with anybody because it was full of trolls. So I've left some areas that are uneven, and I did that deliberately so I could snug in these other rock and pebble shapes. I felt like the first drawing I did like this with the rocks, that I was very careful to get this nice even contour around the edges. And when the painting was done, it looked just a little bit too refined. It didn't look like rocks in the way that they nestle and they overlap each other and they kind of fit in. So I wanted to try to get that effect a little bit more. Maya says that she was able to watch some YouTube and then she had to go do some adulting. That was very responsible of you. I did some adulting myself today. I in the ongoing saga of the contractors, I had interactions with them, and I just kind of took a deep breath and I determined that I was going to remember that I was the boss. I'm the one, that they need to work to my specifications, and not in a way that I was mistreating them or disrespecting them, but just in the sense of that I could set the expectation and that I was the one who was hiring for the job, and that it's not unreasonable for me to say what the parameters of the job are. So yeah, they put in a good day's work today, and I did a walk around to inspect the work they did, and where it looked good, I praised them, and we came around to the side, and there was a big stretch of it that they had not the existing skirting was all kind of pushed in, and they hadn't pulled it out and replaced the frame behind it. It needs to have a wood frame behind it so that it's supported and so that it comes down straight, like the sides of the dwelling, and then the skirting needs to hang straight below that and not be pushed in. So I said, what I said was, I think it would be terrific if this part could be brought up to the standard of the other work that you've done. As it is, this looks like an eyesore. It looks like it really could use a little bit of attention. And if you could just do what you did on the other side, if you could do that here, I think that would be a big improvement. So yeah, don't you agree that doesn't look great? No, it looks pretty bad. So yeah, so, and he was in a much better mood today as well. When I talked to him the other day, he seemed kind of frazzled and confused, and he was doing much better today, so I felt like we made some progress, and hopefully tomorrow he will remember what he said today. So I don't know what more I could do, but yeah. So thank you, Maya. I think that's correct. I read what you say, and I think I'm going to refrain from reading that one out loud so as not to be controversial. But yeah, and I mean, if you treat people gently and with kindness and don't condescend to them or talk down to them, and just be very clear about the expectations. I know yesterday I was feeling quite frustrated because I would like to have the arrangement in writing, and he had just refused. And I was feeling very vulnerable that that the job would drag on or that they would stop work. And I guess, even if I had it in writing, they could still stop work and walk away. But so that project is going pretty good, and there was part of it. There's sort of a half wall. It's a little bit hard to describe, but they had been looking at it, and there's two fellas working on this, and today he said, now what about this? And I just said, no, don't do any work on that. And I could tell they both just seemed very relieved because they'd been trying to figure out. I think they were trying to calculate how much paint, and I'm not sure if he can coat all of the things that need painted with only 2 gallons. I think he might end up back down at the supply store for another gallon. But they definitely wouldn't not have had enough paint if they had done this other half wall, so that was my day. And I will say, I did start my day by doing a live stream with Maya, who is modding for our chat. So I will add a link to that in the description. So I really enjoyed that so much, Maya. Thank you again. I thought our second hour especially, we were talking about art, and I always feel like I get warmed up. The first hour's good. First hour's okay, but the second hour of the live stream just seems to routinely be more lively, and we get the chat going, we get the conversation rolling a little bit better. And I'm not sure how to jump in and just start it like get up to that second hour speed in the first hour, but if I can figure it out, we'll switch it up a little bit. That might be the challenge of every content creator, is to just to get things rolling in a way that's entertaining and lively. And I think in my regular, just my day-to-day real life, I don't encounter people that want to talk about art history or ponder the question of whether artists like Andy Warhol had a team, or that it was I really enjoyed it. I've noticed that about other channels when they start out, that it's a little bit a matter of finding your pace at the beginning. And the more experience, like a podcaster or a content creator, the more experience they have, they get 100 episodes into it and they will just get to the mic and just get right in. They've got their notes, or they've got their script ready to go. And I feel like at this stage I'm sort of coming in quietly and waiting to see what people in chat want to talk about. And I try not to have much of an agenda. I did the first few episodes. I had things that I was like, okay, I'll talk about this. I'll talk about that, and then it would end up that somebody in the chat would throw up something, and we'd take a different turn, and that was really a lot of fun for me, and it seemed to be enjoyable for the people in chat as well. So I kind of like that format, but as I'm working on getting these scheduled, um, I know I'm doing it to myself by just abruptly going, okay, I'm going to live stream now. Like I did this morning, I was trying to head to bed, but I'm really wound up and wide awake, and I know that there's no sense in going to bed. So one of the things that helps calm that runaway mind is to do some of this work. And when I come to do the work, I turn the camera on so that I can share it with all y'all. But we managed to schedule one. I guess it'll be yesterday for, yeah, it was 25 hours ago. So it was yesterday. And we managed to schedule that. So man, I'm retired. I really am resisting this scheduling idea, but I'm working on it. So I will not complain that people subscribers. I won't complain that subscribers don't find me in the first 3 minutes that I go live, because everybody's got lives, and I'm glad you're out doing your things, and I'm quite happy that there's a replay option, and that people find their way to that. I gotta say, this is really kind of challenging. I think the last large format painting I did like this, I did drop in some little areas of color and trace those, and then worked around them. And when I've got a little bit of paint, I can visualize where the rock shapes are going to go, and then I felt like I enjoyed painting in the areas when they had been outlined, so I thought I would try this one and just place these without painting first. But it's a little bit difficult to visualize where the pebbles and the other smaller rocks are going to fit, so I'll keep working on it, and we'll see what we learn as we go. Because it's always something. Maya asks, do I have a plan on what I'm going to talk about? And do I ever have a plan when I stream with you, Maya? And I need to tell you, so or you will go all over the place. I like the places you go, just immediately. I think you go to really, especially when Brad is in the mix, because he's always lively, and I think it would be more accurate to say that, like, I've been mulling over some stuff. I had a really busy evening and modding in a chat that was just wild, and it had a troll attack, which is kind of the first large scale one I've had where we blocked people, and they went to alternate accounts and came back in and came back in and came back in waves. And there was fortunately quite a few mods in the chat, and we had our hands full with it for the majority of the live stream. So that took a lot of concentration, and I was quite emotionally activated, I think is probably a good way to describe that. I wasn't angry, but it was just I had to wake up to be able to stay on top of it. So I I wanted to not come in here and just rant about all of the unreasonable things that trolls were saying, because it just spreads the message of what they were trying to do, and they were trying to sow discord and make people fight with each other. And I say they, but I have a pretty strong hunch that it was not a multiple. I think it was maybe a couple people. I don't think it was. I don't think it was. It certainly wasn't the crowd that it was pretending to be. And for any number of reasons, number one being that there weren't conversations, that it came in one after the other, sequentially, instead of a group coming in and a lot of nattering. So that's why I'm pretty sure it was a small operation. But there was work to do, and the person that was live streaming had something that she was trying to accomplish, and she didn't deserve to be harassed and invaded like that in her channel. If somebody has a message, they can start their own channel and get right on it. So, and here I am talking about it, and as I was gathering my thoughts, I was like, what's winding me up? What's kind of got that low vibe, and what would be a higher vibe, to use the kids with the vibe language? Yeah, because I don't want to bring everybody down, or I don't want to, have a big kerfluffle. I would love to come in and talk about art, and it doesn't all have to be fluffy kitties and My Little Pony, but yeah, I don't think you guys show up here to hear me rail and rant. I mean, if you do, let me know, because I can wind one up for you. I've usually got 2 or 3 going on my head at any given time, so yeah. So as far as topics, like, sometimes there'll be something that's interesting or something that we've talked about. I know a few times that we've had the topic of autism awareness and the experience of being autistic in the world. So that's an example of a topic that I've brought, come in the door going, yeah, we'll talk about this today. But it seems to evolve fairly naturally out of the conversations that we've had in chat. So I think I answered the question, and so Maya says something, which is, sometimes I wish you couldn't hide behind a fake weird name. How many would troll like that if they had to use their own name? Right? And here's the other thing I don't understand, is getting multiple accounts with different names. Right off the bat, I recognize the sentence structure and the question. So they don't disguise themselves, really, by coming in with another persona. And as soon as I see that, there's only one reason a person would do that: come in under one name and then come in with another name, and that is to cause trouble. So as soon as I spot it, I'm on it. And anybody who spends that much time causing mischief needs to take up painting and drawing pebbles and knitting and crocheting and stop being an ass on the internet. Get out of your basement. Take up a hobby. And the rant begins. And we're off. Yeah. Oh. I don't know if it's desperate. It's just like it's kind of the cool kid club, don't you know? Maya says she's laughing and joking that we're desperately trying to diagnose her with autism. I can recommend Paul Micallef, who is his channel is Autism from the Inside, as a resource. He's a person with autism, and he's also a life coach, and he helps people figure out ways to better navigate the pressures of trying to work and trying to date. And I really enjoy his content a lot. I like Mom on the Spectrum, and Mom on the Spectrum presents tons of materials that are self-evaluation instruments, and not just ones that somebody on the internet made up, but she's got links to tests that are put together by researchers and diagnosticians. And so you could take these tests and get some idea. It'll give you some feedback. If you score in this range, you might be autistic, and here's a tool that you can take this test instrument to a therapist or to somebody who's a mental health professional, and that might help you to answer some questions. Like if you took that test and you only scored 15 and the scale said people who score 40 or higher are likely to be autistic, so it could rule it out or it could give you a little bit of confirmation. And I ran through, oh boy, I must have done more than 10 of those. So Mom on the Spectrum, and she's got a nice lively presentation, and I really enjoy watching her. Taylor is her name. So there are a couple of other ones that I watch. I'll put up links in the description or in the comments later for anybody who's curious to find a couple of channels that are not just I want to say this in a nice way, but there are some channels of people who are behaving in an autistic way, and it's almost a caricature, and it's maybe like a shot of their day and what it's like, but it's not about finding yourself. And there are some other creators who are really interested in spreading awareness about what sorts of traits and what sorts of that autistic people have and what sorts of challenges, and also some suggestions and strategies for dealing with life as if you're a person who's got some neurodiverse things going on. So yeah. Well, Maya's saying that she has trouble with tests like that because she can easily just cheat her ass off to get what she wants to the full score. And I had that concern too, and I think, you know, you're going to be a good judge of whether or not you are amping it up or um, just not doing it quite right. But for me, there were a lot of questions that were raised, and it was things like, you know, just talking about your experiences in childhood. Like, did you have one friend? Did you have a group of friends? And like one of the things that was just like it was just my normal childhood. I didn't really think about it too much until I ran across a question that was talking about selective mutism. And I realized that as a child in school, I would talk with my parents, but I didn't talk to the other children unless I was really provoked. And even then, sometimes I would just be silent. I just didn't really like talking to them, is what I felt like, until I was about the eighth grade, which in the United States is about age 14. So I would talk to the librarian, I would talk to the adults, I would answer teachers if they talked to me. But when it came to talking to other children, I would talk to the one person who was my friend, and that was different from year to year. But everybody else, like I could go a week and not utter a word at school. And that's not normal. Or that's not um yeah, that's not that's yeah, that's selective mutism is what that is. So, not selective autism, selective mutism. I didn't speak. Yeah. And then when I began to speak to people, I my speech was very forced and stuttery, and it wasn't smooth at all. So, and that was a twofold problem. It had to do with social interactions, which we people with autism can figure that out, but sometimes it just literally takes us years longer than it takes people who don't have that um, deficit in their abilities. And the other side of it is processing difficulties with speech or speech production. So I always used a vocabulary that which was much more. I never used a childlike vocabulary. I got a few words as a baby, and then I kind of just watched the world. And when I was about 4 years old, I walked out, and I saw something that was disturbing to me, and I needed to let the adults know that something needed to be done. And so, after really not saying much more than just one word things, I walked out from my bedroom and to the family room, and I said to my parents and my aunt who were assembled there, "That pony does not belong in that field." And I'm sure I had like a dead serious look on my face. And I can remember the adults just coming unglued, and my aunt saying, "Oh my God, she said a sentence." And they were so excited that I had made a sentence, but they were not listening to what I was saying. Like, nobody would come to the window and look and see that there was a pony that was in the field where there was previously no pony, and the pony was giving the horse a hard time. And that horse, that was a nice horse, and the pony was just being a jerk. And I mean, I still remember the frustration of telling them exactly what the problem was and having absolutely no person pay attention to what I said. And um, I think it was probably, another damn long stretch of time before I talked to anybody about anything. So, Yeah. It's kind of funny now. Like I could just see like little, 3 foot tall 4 year old me just like with my hands on my hips, like something has to be done about this immediately. Yeah, it was such an odd setup. It was in the 1960s, and there was an alleyway that ran behind our house, and kind of down at the other end of the alleyway was a trailer park, and one of the trailers had this paddock out. It was just like it was so unregulated then a person could just do whatever they wanted. And there was a kind of a group of trailers, but one of them had a paddock out in front, and they had a horse. They had a horse in front of their trailer, which is that's funny. Yeah, not very long after that, the horse and the pony both went away, and so I don't know what happened, but I just remember being a child, and I could see it out the window of my bedroom, and I always wanted to. I always tried to get my parents to take me over there so I could make friends with that horse. Yeah, and I, it's in the memory banks. It's something I know went on, but until I got to that question, it was like, what was your speech like as a kid? When did you first have a sentence? And I think most people would not clearly remember the first time that they strung words together in a sentence. They might have to go back to their baby book or talk to a parent about that. I know exactly when it was, and I know exactly how it went. So, um, wild. I wish I had a horse in a paddock outside. It'd be kind of fun. Yeah, so it's been a while since I've taken any of those tests, but I did find them to be like they weren't necessarily, choose A, B, C, or D and then score it, and the questions were much more open ended, and there were also quite a few questions that I just, things like what's your favorite color, and or something that like the kind of question we've talked about this on the streams before about um, when you ask people to choose absolutes, there are some people who just they know what their answer is, and then there are people who very often they find it very challenging to answer that kind of question. It depends. What are you using the color to cover to paint a car? That's a completely different color that I'm gonna like than what color do I want my T-shirt to be. And so that's something that those kinds of tests can elicit. If you have difficulty answering that question, it tells a lot about how your mind processes things. So, I mean, they ask these questions of of non-autistic people. That's not normal. Everybody's normal. Autistic people, autism is normal. It's part of the way that humans are. It's not abnormal to be autistic. But so they ask these questions of people with autism and people who are not autistic, and then when there are differences, that makes a good test. And so they'll take those questions that people answer differently depending on whether they're diagnosed autistic or not. And so they're much more reliable. You can't really cheat your way through them. Um, and and I think that those kinds of instruments also include a lot of the type of questions that are meant to sort of accommodate that impulse to to be compliant. Maya says that her memory is bad and she can hardly remember anything from her childhood and after becoming an adult. I was that way for a long time. I had a big hole in my memory. I couldn't remember. I couldn't. I still couldn't tell you who some of my grade school teachers are. And I've talked to other people who are like, "Oh yeah, third grade, Mrs. So and so," and like I only had most of my teachers were women, so they kind of blur together, and I don't have a I don't have any memory of what their faces were either, which is uh, not being able to remember or recall faces is called propagnosia, and some people just don't. When someone's in front of me, I know if I'm like, oh, I recognize your face, but generating the face, I'll tell you, I can envision that horse in that field and the fact that, like, which of his feet were white and what color brown he was and the length of the mane. But I couldn't tell you. I think my first grade teacher had short hair, but, then it's somebody I was looking at every day for the school year, so yeah. But I don't really know when those pieces started to fall in. Sometime after undergoing some therapy to treat the post-traumatic stress injury, because I was bullied a lot in school, so I had a lot of trauma around school anyway. And there are big holes, like there are years. Fifth grade's kind of a big hole. But what I do remember, I feel pretty certain that it's a memory and not just an imaginary thing I use to fill in an empty space in my head, if that makes sense. And then also, we're just like our brains are just only a third of the way cooked when we're young. So the way we form memories as children is considerably different than how we do it as adults. So it also is just a little bit harder to get back into that mental state and have good recall for things that happened when you were like before you're 12, because around age 12 we start conceptualizing things in a much different way than we do in that concrete way that we do when we're children. We get we can think of things in metaphors. Boy, I got a lot of paint under my. Never mind. Grooming observation. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, other people will have the ability to just remember that stuff just clearly, and I'm not one of them. I have like entire school years that are just gaps. But the ones where there was some sort of trauma or something going on, those I have pretty clear memories of. And yeah. But it's not just. I think that the main thing is not all the details of your childhood. That's not as important as understanding that autism is a pervasive developmental disorder. It can't just manifest when you're a teenager or an adult. It includes elements that are there from the time you're a child. Like, you're born with it, you always have it. And so there will be some differences, and maybe you can't remember them, but I think we do have this sense of, was there a before time, or have I always been like this? And I'm very certain that I've always been this way. I've always had these challenges. They have evolved as my life has gone through the different phases. You know, you'd have different challenges when you're working versus when you're a child trying to deal with an academic situation. So those evolve as our life, or the work of our life, um, shifts. Yeah. So my saying, she's she should be able to remember what was said yesterday. But come back next week and you'll remember what you said last week. Sometimes it works that way too. Yeah. I don't remember whole strings of things, but I remember discrete events or things that I've done, particularly when I'm hanging out with my people, with my friends. Because when I'm paying attention, I put the memories in like nobody's business. But if it's just an ordinary day and there's nothing that's really getting my attention, like I might remember. I can remember the clothes that I wore when I was in fourth grade, and how the clothing felt, and um, my mom made most of my school clothes, so I didn't have the irritation of tags. But then once I got older and we bought my school clothes, and just remember having things that were my favorites to wear and other things that I really liked the color, but trying to get dressed for school and changing my clothes 5 or 6 times because I would, like, I can remember a particular sweater that I loved the sweater, but it had a tag sewn in such a way that it just, I could never get out of the house with the sweater. And then finally, my mom bought a turtleneck and I could put that on and then wear the sweater over it. And yeah. So Maya is saying that she's got trouble with remembering what happened yesterday, last week, last month, or last year. Has it always been like that, or is that new? And if you look at a photo album or something like that, does does that provoke memories, or do you just look at the pictures and go, "Oh God, I don't even remember that happening"? I keep a lot of ephemera, and I access my memories through ticket stubs and receipts and um, souvenirs, and memory is tricky. And sometimes we need some things to aid the recall. Yeah. Uh, the teenage wardrobe of the jacket that we just had to have, and then it just, was it a cool jacket like the other kids had? Oh, when you said sneakers, I remembered um, smile faces. Like our emojis are all smile faces, and we think that's all new. But there was in the early 1970s, there was a fellow who invented, and they're not smiley faces. They were called smile faces, and you could get round buttons that had the smile on it, and it was a drawing. This guy made them, and it was really popular, and it got printed on everything. And I had a pair of sneakers that were canvas sneakers like Chuck Taylor's, and they had smile faces all over them. And then I had a pair of pants that was white with yellow smile faces all over it. And I had a jacket or a shirt that had smile faces, and I had a backpack. And I probably went to school in third grade wearing smile faces on everything. And button, oh, I had buttons. My grandmother would buy the smile face buttons, and they were just like the emoji, just the smile face. And it was a fad, probably 72 or 73. Um, and I probably was wearing the smile buttons and wearing as much of my smile face gear every day of school as much as I could. So that's that was my special interest, smile faces. Yeah. Boy, I hadn't thought of that in a while. See, I think the memories are there. I think we just need a little something sometimes to just gives a little whoop whoop, get us there. But I'll tell you, if I had those shoes today, I would still wear sneakers with yellow smile faces all over them. I I want those right now. I just I want to look on Amazon.com. Boy, if I can find those and I get my merch store going, I am going to sell smile face sneakers because they were the best things. I'm such a dork. Mm. Oh, yeah. So Maya says that her jacket wasn't that cool, but it was pink. I didn't like it, but it had a cool pocket, and the sneakers had tiny pockets on the outside. So yeah, I like a pocket too. I had a pink jacket, and I wore it until it just came apart at the seams, and it was a shiny satiny material, and it was like bright fluorescent pink. So kids are funny, but there are things that they like to wear. Yeah, I could. Other kids teased me about that stuff, and it just didn't even land because it was, yeah, the more buttons I could put, and they would just, oh, there were probably, I don't know, 20 or 30 of these little round buttons in different fluorescent colors with the same smile face on it. My point about the creators out there with their channels is there's just a lot of resources, and there are quite a few adults that they're taking the autism awareness pretty seriously. And I mean, you can find people who are just acting a little offbeat, deliberately so, in a way that I just scratch my head and I go, I don't know if that's authentic, because it looks like you're just being you're creating a performance. And there are also some folks that are putting videos of their children, and like children that are nonverbal and tantruming in public, and I I don't like to see kids on the internet displayed in that way. So you can find a lot of that kind of content, and it's hashtagged autism awareness. Um, I don't find that useful. Yeah, there's another fellow, Australian, Orion Kelly, here on YouTube. Um, Last time I watched his content, he was very much in the you don't get to call yourself autistic unless you have an official diagnosis camp. And for a lot of people, especially older females, there are not diagnosticians available at any price. When I was going through mine, I was halfway through the process, and this is so unethical. The professional that was doing the diagnosis decided that he didn't want to do um, he didn't want to work doing diagnosis for people like me. He wanted to only work for cash doing evaluations of children. And, maybe that was his forte. Maybe he just decided to work to his strengths. But as an older adult female who was halfway through the evaluation, when this guy said, hey, I'm not going to take insurance anymore, I can get $6,000 per kid and I can do 2 kids a day. And I'm going to do that work. I thought it was really unethical. And it's just if you can get in the door and get an appointment, and so that's one barrier. And I've heard people say, well, like for me, the evaluation, like I waited over 6 months before there was an available appointment to even begin the evaluation. So, um, yeah, that's just, we shouldn't have to put up with that. That was just shitty. And I mean, good for all the little boys that got to get their autism diagnosis, but um, it's frustrating. And it's been years, and I still feel pretty angry about it. And if you're in a remote place or a small town, that you might not even be able to find an evaluator. So that needs to change. And I don't know whether we just need to start waving money at these guys, because, in America, nothing gets done unless somebody's waving money about it. Maybe that's the answer. But the other side of it, and this is something I ran into again and again, is like, why do you care? It's not like there's services to help you. It's not like you're a child and we can, try and quote unquote fix you. It's like you've already made your way through life. You've worked and you've, like, what do you want us to do for you? And I think there's so many things that can be done for older adults. For one thing, just getting that diagnosis and finally figuring out that, yeah, there were some real reasons that my brain was just working a little bit differently. I had different strengths, and always trying to measure up to people who could easily navigate interpersonal interactions. Like, once I found out that it was just because my brain can't process that stuff as fast as other people, I can't do it with as much ease. And so if I'm out trying to people, whether it's just deal with people in a store or buy some goods, or just I come home and I feel like I need to take hours of just quiet to stop feeling like my body is quivering. And it's not that anybody's picking on me out there, it's just like it just takes so much concentration and so much effort to try to figure out the simple stuff. And I thought it was just me being neurotic, and it turns out, no, there's a lot of people with autism who just get drained trying to deal with people, even people they really like, because it just takes a toll. It's hard to process for us. And if you can imagine, like, maybe you don't do math really well and you had to sit and do calculations for 9 hours, and, maybe you had to solve geometry problems, and how you might feel at the end of that period of time. Like, would you feel relaxed and energized and ready to go do something else? Or would you feel like, I just want to suck my thumb and grab a blanket? I don't suck my thumb, but, you just want to be someplace quiet and get comforted and do that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Maya saying he could at least finish the patients he had. It was complicated because we came into COVID and there was the lockdown, and he literally had to close his office. And then when he reopened his office, he just went, yeah. So all the evaluations, we were kind of in the middle of them, and um, yeah, they were just like, okay, we're gonna push everything out. And then sometime during the pandemic, with all that thinking, he went, hey, I can make a ton of money doing this shit, and I don't have to deal with insurance reimbursement. And because it was an evaluation, he didn't, strictly speaking, have a patient-client obligation. Because he wasn't my therapist, he was an independent um, evaluator. So Maya says she really struggled with that when she was working. I got so worn out by being at work, so when I went home, I had no energy to do anything, right? And and that was what I experienced, and then I was diagnosed with, oh, you have depression, and so I did all of the things to resolve depression, and I still had that kind of overwhelm and burnout, just trying to do things that seem to come so easily to other people. Anyway, there's a lot of there are a lot of different aspects to the nervous system differences that autistic people deal with. And for me, it wasn't just the behavioral stuff, it was also the way that my nervous system reacted to things like sounds. And I do okay as long as I'm not dealing with too much stuff, and then I reach a point where there's too much input, too much stimuli, and then I lose the ability to sort out the little sounds from the big sounds, from the voices. And if somebody's talking and I'm kind of pressured or feeling like I've had tried to do too much stuff, the voice sounds the same volume as the airplane flying in the sky, as the car driving by, as the air in the air conditioner, as the little clicking from the pen from the person over. Like, it all is just on level 10. And if I'm not stressed out, I can sort of gate that stuff out, but you put much pressure on the system and my auditory processing just goes to hell in a handbasket. And also, I seem to hear tons and tons of sounds that other people, like, I'll be, does anybody hear that whine? And people will go, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. It's like, no, don't you hear the light bulbs? Oh, I'm so glad fluorescents are phasing out, because I could always hear the fluorescent light bulbs. And, most people can't. Most people, well, maybe they can, but they just don't, like, they don't clock it. It doesn't bother them. And yeah, and LED lights make noises too, so especially as they're getting ready to go. So strange little, just things that I would sense that other people would not even. I would sense them and I would be bothered by them, and other people would say, "Yeah, we don't know what you're talking about." Just to stop being so difficult. And to be frank, I would have loved to have been able to ignore that stuff and stop being difficult. I would have liked nothing better. And now, what I do, like I do this in grocery stores, waiting rooms, pretty much anytime I'm out walking around. Um, I wear loop earplugs that they've got a hole through the center of them, and they filter out a bunch of noise, but they also let you be able to hear voices. And I have found that to be a very helpful tool to be able to. When I have those in, I can tolerate being in a grocery store, but if I don't have them and that the music is playing and I'm trying to sort out a consumer decision and the beeping from the registers and the clacking of the carts, like I will. I have a routine about how I move through the grocery store and what I buy, and if something's not available, it just kind of throws me, and if the noise is unfiltered, it's too much. So I have been known to leave the grocery store without anything at all. And it's go home, try again. I'd like to say I would try again tomorrow, but it's usually try again in several days. I don't know if anybody's going to be interested in listening to me yammer on about what it's like to navigate the world with some neurological differences, but I hope it's not boring. I hope it's helpful. And autism is pretty common. I mean, if you know someone who's left-handed, chances are you probably also know some people who are autistic. And, even if you're not autistic, you might have a sibling or a relative of some sort who is, or you might work with somebody or know and love somebody who's autistic. Just a little quirky and offbeat. So just know we're not really trying to be a pain in the ass when that stuff starts to get to us. It's just our processing system doesn't gate the input the way that non-autistic people can do. We literally can't ignore it. Not without tremendous effort. It was. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I'll address this a little bit briefly about the depression misdiagnosis. I finally put my foot down and I said, I'm at the top of the dose for this medication and it is not doing the job. I mean, it changed my behavior and it certainly hadn't. It had a. It, the antidepressants had a lot of impact on my body. I had a lot of side effects and had trouble tolerating them. And I think part of it was I'm taking a medication for something I don't have. So if my body didn't really need to have the medication, of course, any that's in your system is an excess. So you're going to have a reaction to that. I also like just lots of side effects. If it was listed in the, I was having side effects, and then when they would revise the patient insert, there were a couple of things that were happening to me, and then later they got added to that patient insert, and I'd been telling the doctor I'm getting like my jaw clenching and teeth grinding to the point where my teeth were. I broke several teeth with the jaw clenching, and anyway, so that's a real danger if you're autistic and they're just like, well, you kind of seem easily overwhelmed and you have kind of your mood is down, and it's like, yeah, because everything's fucking hard. And it's just like I come home and I'm upset and I go, why can other people do it and I can't do it? And it's just like there's a lot about it where you have the burnouts and the meltdowns, and it really can like depression. So at some point I just went like, I'm taking this medicine and I'm doing the things and it's not helping. Okay, well, we tried another medication. Eventually kind of ran through most everything that was available. And that was the process that led me to say, there's got to be an explanation for what my body is doing. And after we, tried everything, the therapist thought, oh, yeah, you're anxious, you're depressed. And nope, nope, nope. But there's an answer because there's definitely some dysfunction going on. And that was what eventually got to the proper diagnosis. Yeah. So Maya says, wait, was it you who said, was it me? She's asking me, was I the person who said I can hear the northern lights? And yes. So when I was in Alaska, I lived in Anchorage, and the northern lights are visible there pretty commonly throughout the winter. And I lived in a daylight basement apartment, which means it was underground, but not completely underground. Like the top 2.5, 3 feet, there were small windows that were at the top of the walls. And so we did get light into the apartment and stuff. But in Alaska, that's the best apartment to get because your heating bills are better than any other place in the building. So it sounds kind of grim, but that was actually where I want it to be. So the point is with the windows is you didn't have a line of sight out to the sky. And also because of the way there's daylight, every place you rent or live in, or like everybody has blackout curtains. But I would be inside and I would have this perception that was almost kind of like a oh, just a little, like not quite a sound. Like I would say, like if I was listening, like I wouldn't say you could detect it with a microphone. It was a perception that came in on my auditory channel, and it was somewhere between vision and sound. And I'm not exactly sure if that's synesthesia. Synesthesia is something that combines two senses, like a smell taste. Like we know synesthesia because we do smell and taste. But it was kind of like that. And I the northern lights happen pretty frequently, like between 2 and 4 a.m. So I would be aware that they were going on, and I would get up and put on my snow pants and put on my jacket and my boots and head out the door. And I had a roommate at that time, and she would go like, "Where the hell are you going? It's the middle of the night." And I would say, "I'm going to go watch the northern lights," and she's like, "Oh, there's no north." And she just was like, she didn't understand. I just looked like a crazy person. And I'd come back 45 minutes later. I'd walk around the neighborhood and look at the northern lights in the mountains. And I'd come back and I'd say, "Oh, you should have been out there. They were purple and red, and there was you can almost always get green and red, but every once in a while you get this sort of purple that's really extraordinary." So I'd come back, and then she'd be jealous because she didn't go see them, and and she couldn't do that. But I would never go out and not see them. And there were times where she would go, "Well, I'm going to go look at the northern lights because you're wackadoodle." And she would come back and I would say, "Well, how were they?" And I would know damn well because I could perceive that they were not going on. And she'd come back and say, "Well, there wasn't a damn thing in the sky." I'd say, "Okay, well, the next time I'll tap gently on your door," because we were both insomniacs. Obviously, we were running around at 2 in the morning. And like, I would just have an awareness of that they were going on. And I'm not alone in this. There are people who have perception of them. And the energy is kind of in between a radio wave and a light, I think. A light wave. It's on, yeah, the Northern Lights energy, it's not something we really have equipment built to detect, but it sort of straddles a couple of energy spectrums. So yeah, and it wasn't loud. It wasn't like it wasn't like I could hear a siren and go running outside. It was just this very, very subtle thing that yeah. So when Maya says when she was a kid she knew someone who could had a perception of lightning, even though they were in a room without any windows. I will say, when we get thunderstorms, sometimes there's an ozone smell that you can smell in the air here in Oregon, and it smells like flint or dirt. There's kind of a sharp metallic. Um, and then when snow is coming, you can taste it. If you inhale the air over your tongue, there's a metallic taste in the air, and I would always, I'd like to say, I'll bet you $1 it's gonna snow today. I'll bet you $1 there's northern lights outside. Or I'll bet you a quarter. These just kind of small bets. And every once in a while you'll have somebody in your life, an acquaintance or a roommate or a friend who's like, yeah, I'll take that bet. And then $5 or $10 into, I'll bet you $1 this is going on. I I think that there are some cultures like I'm so westernized. I grew up in a city, and also mostly like I lived in the city. My grandfather had a farm, and so we were kind of in the land, but we weren't working the land in the way that Native Americans or First Nations people do, or people who are like Maya, you would be dealing with like the Sami people, right? And up in Anchorage, up in Alaska, there's a lot of Native Alaskans, and they're people who have many, many words for different types of snow, and they're people who have that intimate sort of way of being involved with their environment because their survival depends on it, and their culture is really different. Where I grew up, like if it's cold, you go inside and you shut the door. You don't necessarily engineer your clothing to make sure you don't freeze to death. And if you're living in the bush in Alaska and you're an Alaskan Native person or Canadian First Nations, Inuit or Inuk, or, they culturally just have probably a lot more people who could go outside and go breathe in through their mouth. Yeah, I taste there's snow in the air, it's going to snow. So I don't think I'm like super special about that. I think it's just probably one of those abilities that only some cultures respect enough to cultivate. All of this, and you know what? I don't really believe in UFOs or Bigfoot. I'm my own kind of wackadoodle. Yeah. Oh, so said she could see the lightning inside her head. Boy. Too bad Lee Trevino couldn't do that. That was an old American golf joke. And not that funny. Lee Trevino was a golfer who got struck by lightning on the golf course several times and survived. He really loved golf, and he just said, oh, when it starts to rain, I got the golf course to myself. Yeah, you and the lightning. Kaboom. Go inside, man. I don't think I ever want to get struck by lightning. It's, that is a... Yeah, just no thank you. Just no thank you on getting struck by lightning. am so surprised that nobody has joined the chat other than Maya. Usually we've got some chatter, but I see people here, and I've seen you out there, and I'm so glad that you're hanging out with us. And I hope that you're not just, I guess if you were bored, you just scrolled. So I'm glad to have you, and I hope that it's entertaining or enlightening or soothing or well, something, something positive. I am gonna, just a fair warning, I'm gonna wrap this up in about an hour and a half. We're at 1 hour 20 minutes right now, so another 8.5 minutes. And usually when I make that announcement, that's when you know it too, Maya, right? Like when I say that, that's when 4 people come in and say, "Oh, I haven't seen you in 2 weeks. How are you?" So, yeah. Oh, Maya says that being hit by lightning would not be on her bucket list if she had a bucket list. No bucket list? Hmm. No bucket list at all? Not even like some foods you'd want to, like, I'm guessing you probably don't have pumpkin pie in Norway. Like, wouldn't you want to have a slice of apple pie or pumpkin pie? Or you probably have apple pie. That's pretty universal. You know what? I've never seen the Grand Canyon. I've flown over it several times. So I've seen it from the air, and I've seen the waterfalls at the north. I've seen the north end of the Grand Canyon, but I haven't seen the whole thing properly. And I think it would be kind of cool to go in. Well, see, either I was thinking I like shoulder season, I like spring, and I like fall. And I'm thinking if I went in fall, like the temperatures would be cooler, but you'd have the risk of snow. And then when I thought about it a minute, you also have the risk of snow in the spring. But exactly, Maya. They're like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm like, I was planning to be here for 3 more minutes, but okay. So, yeah, we'll say, yeah, 7 to 37 minutes. What else? I've never been to Hawaii or any place like an island like Fiji or Bali. From where I'm at to get to Fiji or Bali or Tahiti is a really long trip. But when I lived up in Anchorage, there were tons of cheap flights to Hawaii because from Anchorage to Hawaii, not that far. And also super freaking cold in the winter, and so people would just go, screw this. In the 2 coldest weeks in January, a lot of people would bail out of Anchorage and they'd go to Hawaii. And I was either working or then I got sick and I didn't have a lot of money. I was just trying to stick with it and hang in there. And so, but you could like fly round trip to Hawaii for like I don't know, $100, $150 back then. Hmm. I don't have like a written bucket list, but I think I do have kind of this internalized. I don't even know if I'd call it a list. Maybe it's just an interest in doing some things that I have not done before. Um, a lot of people with just the straight autism, they want the routine. They like the routine, it's good, they don't want change. They don't ever want to, you know, um, Novel things are not on the list. I am ADD and autistic, so the ADD part of me really likes novelty. I like doing new things, and I get bored with stuff after a while. So I always have to change things up. And that may be a surprise for someone that you've been watching on the internet draw pebbles for the last 10 weeks. It just seems like she wants to do that all again. And then I kind of do. I like it. Um, I get something out of the thing that I do and doing the thing. But I really relish novel experiences, and one of the ways that I add novelty to my life is by eating at a new restaurant or trying a new version of a food I already eat. Because there are a lot of foods I'm just not, no thank you. I was forced to eat them once as a child, and I don't ever need to do that. But if there's a new flavor of donut, yeah, I'll try that. If there's a new kind of a sandwich, yeah, I'll try that. Um, a new kind of cheese, but I mean, some types of foods, absolutely, just no. Like, you're never gonna get me to, yeah. Well, I don't need to go into it, but yeah, eating meat is a little bit of a challenge. So eating things that are parts of animals that are okay. Danny talks about chicken feet. I don't know what it would take for me to be able to eat a chicken foot. It's just, I guess I could probably become so hungry I would, but um, yeah, probably no, maybe no. So, oh, oh, fireflies. Fireflies are. Fire. Maya says that if she had a list, seeing fireflies would be on it. And we don't have them out in Oregon, at least not where I live. I think I've seen one in Oregon one time. I saw something and I thought that might have been a firefly. The summer that I spent in Kentucky at Fort Knox, I they have fireflies in Kentucky, and so we would be doing a lot of um, training that happened at night. And the first time I saw a firefly, I about came out of my skin. It was probably 2 feet in front of my face, and all of a sudden there was this burst of light right there, and like I jumped backwards, um, and there were other people who were just like, "Oh, for Pete's sake, it's just a firefly," and um, it's absolute magic. It is absolute. Um, it's probably as cool as seeing the northern lights are really magical. They're really really cool. Fireflies, like for me, I'd never seen one. So maybe if I grew up, I'd just go, "Huh, it's just a firefly." But no, and they blink on and off, and they move, and the ones that I saw were just sort of like 3 to 12 feet off the ground. Like they're just right in your line of sight, and you can be going along, and all of a sudden it just starts to glow. Sometimes they would turn on suddenly and very brightly, and sometimes it would just be this little glow, and then it would get bigger, and it's such an amazing golden bit of light. How in the world do they do that? It's magic. Yeah, that's a great thing on the list. Yeah. Going to Australia for a couple of hours. Wouldn't that be incredible? Seems like there's so many nice people in Australia. I'd love to go visit them. Yeah. Zero desire to spend the night in a tent in Australia, though. I I've heard people in Australia say we aren't living like close to close with huntsman spiders and deadly snakes and platypus that can sting you to death and crocodiles. We just tell everybody that so they stay the hell away and leave us alone. Alaska is kind of that way too. In that, like, people from there are like, oh yeah, it's dark all the time. You don't want to come here. And then when you live there, you find out it's just this amazing place. And I live in Oregon, and we tell people, oh yeah, no, it rains all the time. You don't want to move here. It's kind of a scam, but yeah, it doesn't rain all the time in Oregon. It's a pretty awesome place to live. Well, see, I kind of think of that when you say about beaming from place to place. I think you already have something that's a bit like that in Europe because of the trains. Like when I was going to school in Vienna, um, I bought a rail pass, and then as soon as classes were done on Thursdays, I would just grab my backpack and book it down to the train station and look to see where the next train was headed. And so I went from Vienna to Berlin. I went one time I went from Vienna to Venice, Italy. So like you leave in the evening, right? You're in Austria. You wake up the next day and you're in Venice, Italy, and it's completely different light, different sound. Like it is as close, riding a train, a high speed train, is as close to time travel as I think I'm going to see. And it felt like time travel. So, yeah, I wish that people who lived in Europe could get those rail passes, but they would sell your rail passes and they're available to people who don't live in Europe. So if you're traveling to Europe, you can buy them and you get this great deal and you can just, you know, run to the station, and if there's a seat available on the train, you've it's already paid for in the pass. I bought a 2 month pass, and I just every time I had, um, well, certainly on the weekends, because then I didn't have classes until Tuesday morning or Monday afternoon. So yeah, yeah, and really, like I was in the first part was in Strasbourg, France, which is certainly trains going all over the place, and Vienna trains going all over because of the UN is there, and um, yeah. Like at one point though, I'd been in Vienna. I think I'd been there for like it was 4 weeks of just being in cities, and I was just desperate to go see some grass. So we got on a train and went to Switzerland, and then took the next smallest train and went to Luzerne. Got to Luzerne and said, "Yeah, we're looking for clean air and green grass." And at the train station, they said, "Oh, we can get on this narrow gauge train and it'll take you to Engelberg up in the Alps." And so we just rode smaller and smaller trains until we got to the terminus of the rail line and spent a weekend in Engelberg hiking in the Alps. It was fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, I think I would put on my bucket list. You can do that. Amtrak in America is last time I took Amtrak, the seat cushion was so worn out that I could feel the bolts in the seat, like the seat were coming poking through the seat cushion. So our a lot of our Amtrak trains are pretty worn out and pretty crappy. But every few years, Amtrak, the American train system, will sell a rail pass for senior citizens, and it's very economical, and you can just ride the train anywhere Amtrak goes. And if I could find a travel buddy, I would love to do that. Yeah. Hmm. So Maya says it's a 6 hour drive to get to the train station. Holy crap. I've seen pictures of where you live. It's beautiful, but boy, that's a long ways from a train station. And then you have to take the train for a whole day through Sweden. To go like down to Malmo. Sweden's so beautiful though. And then you have to cross the water to get to Denmark, yeah. Gonna take a lovely ferry. But you could probably travel to places like Latvia and Estonia and Finland, or even like travel in Norway. Goodness, beautiful there too. But there's a rail system in Canada that might be actually pretty cool because I don't know. I've driven through quite a bit of the United States. I'm not. There's not a lot of it that like I'd like to see the Chicago area. I've flown in and out of it, and I haven't really had a chance to spend any time. And there are some fantastic museums in. Buddy, please don't do that. So I'd like to see Chicago, I think. And I used to think I wanted to go to New York and LA, but I may have outgrown that urge. Just as my mobility has changed, New York seems like it would be really difficult to navigate. Back when I could walk everywhere, it would have been fine, but it just, like, this idea of it seems like a lot of overwhelming hustle and bustle. So maybe taking the train across Canada, maybe that'd be the thing to do. Well, the cat just came and informed me that it was time for cat food, so I think I've filled in most all of the spaces here. I got pretty good coverage. There's a couple little spots. And I think I've just been chatting and I've filled in more of these than I was going to leave some negative spaces so I could just paint in and have it go. But I actually, one of the things I discovered when I did the last one is I enjoy painting in the shapes. That was kind of fun. So, yeah, thank you, Maya. Maya says it looks so pretty. It was fun to do this one and do all the rocks in different colors and shapes this time. Get a little more variety in it. And I haven't decided. I was thinking the last couple of ones I've done a little water line around the rocks and done a wash of color. And I don't know if I'll put these ones underwater yet or not. We'll have to find out on the next episode. So I'm gonna wrap it up here. I want to thank everybody for coming and spending time with me. I want to thank people who are on the replay crew for spending time, and I just appreciate you all so much. And Maya, thanks for coming and hanging out and chatting with me. I yeah, she's wasting away. She's not wasting away. She had extra cat food yesterday, so she is telling cat lies like she often does. Um, she does not. She does not want for food and plenty of it. Hope you will all find some time to get your craft out. Get your craft out and get it on. Do some knitting or crocheting or embroidery, painting, polymer clay, whatever it is you do, or you'd like to do, or coloring books. I really love coloring, and it's a very peaceable activity. So I just want to encourage you, as I always do, go make some art. Have a great end to your week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for coming in, everybody. Bye. Thank you, Maya. I appreciate you. We'll talk soon.